This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Hing.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Big Country Publishing Radio Show with your host, Christina Winslow. This program is an hour of entertainment, inspiration, and fun as Christina features topics to empower you and guests dedicated to making a difference in your life and in the world. And now, your host, Christina Winslow.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm so excited for today's topic. We're going to talk to a visionary and an author who has some great spiritual guidance. Before I introduce our guest, I just want to thank all of you, our listeners out there. We have been getting a lot of feedback and emails and just want to show our appreciation so much. So we will be offering a lot of free goodies through our newsletter. And we're redoing all of that. So if you haven't signed up for our newsletter yet, please email us and tell us to add you to the list, and we're going to give you all kinds of fun stuff. So our email address is radio@bigcountrypublishing.com. Well, as you all know, as listeners of this show, I love books that inspire you, educate you, empower you. And this is such a book called Dancing on a Stamp. The author is with us today, Garnet Schulhauser. And before I bring him on, I'm going to give you a little bit of his background because he has this amazing spiritual book, but it's from an unlikely source, in my opinion, being in this spiritual metaphysical world for so many years. Garnet Schulhauser practiced corporate law with two large law firms in Calgary, Canada for 34 years, before retiring to Vancouver Island in 2008, where he now lives with his wife Kathy and little dog Abby. So to have a corporate attorney now offering these spiritual books is just so amazing to me, and I can't wait to ask him all about it. So Garnet's life changed dramatically one day in 2007 when he was confronted on the street by a homeless man named Albert. Over the next few years, he had a series of conversations with Albert, who is actually a wise spirit guide in disguise, who disclosed startling new truths about life, death, the afterlife, and God. Garnet wrote Dancing on a Stamp at Albert's request so that these revelations would be available to everyone. Garnet, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Christina.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Garnet. Now, you write this book, which has a bunch of questions, and we'll get into those questions later, that you had actually asked your spirit guide.
That's correct, yes.
So take the audience who hasn't read the book yet back to when you met this homeless man. And you thought he was just a homeless man, and were you practicing law at the time?
Yeah, I was. I was practicing law, as you mentioned in your introduction, in Calgary, in Canada. And I was practicing law, and it was sort of like a typical Monday. Wasn't expecting anything unusual. And in the middle of the afternoon, it was a sunny day in May. I decided just to go for a walk, a short walk to get some fresh air. So took the elevator down, and the street in front of our building is closed off to vehicles. It's a pedestrian mall. So I just walked down this mall, and I went for a couple of blocks without really seeing anything unusual or expecting anything unusual. And I was enjoying the afternoon when all of a sudden this homeless man sort of jumps seemingly out of nowhere, jumps in front of me. Now, my first impression was, well, this is like a typical homeless person. I had run into these people on the street many times before, and usually what I did would make a quick sort of sidestep around these people because they were often panhandling for money. But in this case, though, I didn't. He basically froze me in my tracks and why he did that was because he had these amazing, sparkling, dazzling blue eyes. And his blue eyes were doing sort of two things at the same time that I felt. Anyway, the first was that his gaze was penetrating very deeply into my whole being, right down to the depths of my soul, I felt like. And I sensed that this man knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done. He knew my hopes and aspirations and my fears and anxieties and my deepest and darkest secrets. And I have no idea at the time why he knew all these things, because we'd never met before. So I was standing there under this man's gaze, feeling kind of naked and exposed. But I didn't feel violated. I didn't want to turn and run, because at the same time, his eyes were sending me this gush, this wave of amazing unconditional love, which was just sort of permeating my whole body and filling me with an amazing sense of peace and security. So that just sort of held me in place. It was like a deer caught in the headlights. I couldn't move, didn't want to move, and I really wanted to enjoy that amazing feeling that was coming from this man. And I don't know how long I stood there, but after some time, this man broke my reverie by saying, "Why are you here?" And he immediately turned and disappeared into a nearby store. So when I finally collected my wits, I went into the store to see if I could find him. I needed to find out who he was and why did he ask me that question, and how did he have such amazing eyes. Anyway, in the store, he was nowhere to be seen, and there was only one entrance and one exit, and I hadn't seen him come out, but he wasn't there. I walked up and down the street for a while trying to find him, but he was not to be seen. So I slowly made my way back to my office with my head spinning, and it was full of all these questions like, well, who was this guy? And why did he stop me? And where is he from? And how did he fill me with such unconditional love? So that night at home, I resolved to myself that I had to find this guy. It was just incredibly intriguing, and I actually wanted to be under the gaze of his amazing unconditional love one more time. Anyway, so the very next day. Sorry?
I'm sorry. So, yes. Garnet, I want to find out, okay, before you get to the next part, if you don't mind me interrupting.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So here you are. I've dealt a lot with attorneys, okay? So corporate lawyers, you have the law office, the staff. You have this, spiritual type unconditional love encounter. You go back to your corporate law office. Were you just feeling out of body? It's not like you were teaching yoga, Garnet, and doing meditation classes, and then you go out for a little walk at lunch and have this, spiritual experience with a homeless man. Do you understand? I'm trying to find out from you, did you go home and tell your wife, I don't know what just happened to me, or did you tell anybody, or what was going through your head other than you wanted to meet him again?
Yeah, actually, I didn't. I really knew that I had to meet this man, and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my assistant. I didn't tell any other lawyers in the office, and I didn't even tell my wife. I didn't, or my sons. I didn't tell anyone. It was just I don't know quite what to do with this. I don't know what happened to me, and I need to find out before I sort of start talking to people about it. So I just kept it very quiet to myself, and all that evening I kept on thinking about my encounter and trying to figure out what had happened and who this guy was. But I didn't say anything to anyone. Kept it just carried on when I got back to the office. Carried on as I would normally, and so nobody would have known that I had this encounter with this homeless man. I was very very careful to keep it quiet until I could figure out who he was and what exactly was going on. So anyway, the next day, next afternoon, same time, I went back out onto the same street and walked up and down trying to find this guy. And I was probably walking around for about 15 minutes when finally there I spotted him sitting on a bench by himself. So I walked up to him and I said to him, okay, who are you and why did you ask me that question and why did you stop me? And he said to me, well, I'm a soul just like you and I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey. And so then my lawyer brain, which is always, it's hard to turn off. I don't know if you've ever been a lawyer, you know what I mean, but lawyers tend to be a bit skeptical about things and searching for answers and trying to get to the bottom of things. In any event, so my lawyer brain kicked in, and I said, well, how are you going to help me when it doesn't appear like you can even help yourself? Because you look like you've been sleeping in the street for weeks and you have no money. So how can you help me? And he said, give me a big smile, and he said, well, looks can be deceiving. He said, you look like you're a successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade, and that you have many questions in your life, and you're searching for answers, and you're unsettled. He said, you can turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find your answers in all those emails waiting for you on your computer, or you can sit down and have a chat with me. What do you have to lose? And thankfully, at that stage, my intuition kicked in, and it was screaming at me, saying, sit down and talk with this guy. You really do have to find out more about him. And so I did. And so that was sort of the first conversation we had. And then over a period of months, we had many more conversations. And initially, he appeared to me as the homeless man. And he was like real flesh and blood, and I touched him, and he even smelled badly. So he totally played the role of being a homeless person. But then after the third visit, he no longer appeared as the homeless man. He just came to me as a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. And I found out sort of, during the first visit, that he was actually one of my spirit guides who had decided to confront me disguised as the homeless man. And he said the reason for that was that if he had just started talking to me as a voice in my head, I likely would have thought I was going crazy and would have tried to ignore it. So this was his way of introducing himself into my life in a gentle sort of way, so that when he came to me as a voice in my head, I recognized the voice and I knew exactly who he was, and so I wasn't troubled in the least bit. In fact, that was, a very good way for us to communicate, and I knew that I no longer needed to see him sitting in front of me as the homeless man. So the other interesting thing that he told me was that I was the only one who could see him as this homeless person, because other people, he wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have appeared to the other people who were walking by on the street, so that if somebody had walked by our bench that day, it would have appeared like I was sitting on the bench talking to myself. So I was the only one who could see him. So it's a very interesting way for him to thrust himself, if you will, into my life, so that we could have this conversation.
That is so funny, Garnet, because I have to tell you that, going to a lot of functions at the country club with corporate attorneys, and there's a lot of attorneys on my husband's side of the family. The last thing on earth that I would ever talk to attorneys about was a spirit guide, because they'd probably want to lock me up into an institution. It's just not in that world.
You're totally right.
How are you open enough to even grasp the concept of a spirit guide? I'm not trying to make a judgment against attorneys at all, but we're in that world a lot. And that is the last topic of conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and you're quite right. And that was one of the reasons that I didn't tell any of my partners in a law firm about my encounters, because I knew that a lot of them would just sort of roll their eyes and wonder if they should be calling for the guys with the straitjacket. Because that's just totally, you're absolutely right. It's not in anybody's world. And there may be some people who, attorneys who have similar experiences or who believe in the things that I do, but they just keep it quiet. And I think it's just for the sake of the profession and dealing with clients, you don't want anyone to think that you're sort of, you've flipped it off on a different sort of course. So that's very understandable. And I expect some of the attorneys that you've encountered, maybe secretly they have beliefs similar to mine, but of course they're not going to admit that. But yeah, it was, and the reason I was sort of open to this conversation and to hear what Albert had to say was, it was really one of those things where you had to be there, because he was so he was so enthralling. He was so believable. He the way he talked and the way he kind of infused me with unconditional love. I just knew that he was a very special person. He wasn't sort of the average kind of human being on earth. And so combination of all those things, it just made sense to me that, yeah, this guy was for real. And I believed him when he said he was my spirit guide. And I actually believed all of his answers because they really rang true to me. I mean, it was like, yes, I've been asking these questions. This guy has the answers. The answers make a lot of sense to me, and they make me feel good, and they're comforting. And so I just knew he was the genuine thing.
Well, I applaud you, Garnet, because we need more people like you who are in the more traditional professions like corporate law, who have these spiritual experiences and insights to come out of the closet and to get out there with their message, because I think you're right. A lot of people might believe the way we do in some of these more traditional professions, but they don't talk about it in public. And so I was so excited to have you on this show because you can really help probably unlock a lot of people who feel like they have to be quiet about it because of the work they've chosen. And so you're definitely a visionary and a blessing to us all to put this book out.
Yeah, it was a struggle to come out of the spiritual closet, Christina, as you mentioned, because I knew that a lot of my friends and colleagues and so on, a lot of them would just think I'd gone off the deep end, and so I was concerned about that, concerned about being rejected, concerned about the reaction of some people, concerned about snickers behind my back kind of thing. But ultimately, I knew that I had to do it, otherwise I'd regret it the rest of my life. So I went ahead and wrote the book and found a publisher and published it. And to my surprise, there were a lot more of my, former colleagues who sent me emails after the book was out, applauding me for having done this and thanking me for having the courage to come out of the closet and to publish this book. Now, some of my former, friends and colleagues did shun me. There's some people who I've never heard from, and I think it's because they just think, well, this guy's gone a little crazy here, and we don't really want to talk to him. I knew there'd be some fallout, but it was something I had to do, and I was very encouraged by some of the very positive comments that I got from some of the people who I never would have thought in a million years would have signed on to what I wrote in my book, Dancing on a Staff. So it was overall very rewarding experience, and if I had to do it again, I'd do it exactly the same way.
Well, you're an inspiration, Garnet, and we have a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the questions you asked your spirit guide and the amazing answers you had received. So stay tuned. We're talking to Garnet Schulhauser, author of Dancing on a Stamp.
Would you like a tool to clear your energy field and raise your vibration instantly? Solfeggio Sound Healing from Earthly Frequencies is a new CD created to bring you earthly healing vibrations combined with higher dimensional galactic energy. Use this sound healing for meditation, massage therapy, releasing negativity, and astral travel. Solfeggio Sound Healing by Ted Winslow. Now available on iTunes and Amazon.com. Have you been told you should write a book? Do you need a little help getting started? Or maybe your manuscript is already written and you require some fine-tuning before you publish. Big Country Publishing offers writing coaching packages that are custom-tailored to you. Contact Big Country Publishing today so they can help you to get your book and message out to the world. Learn more at www.bigcountrypublishing.com. When it comes to publishing, there is a difference. At Big Country Publishing, they work with you on a personal level to create a custom publishing package that's tailored to your needs as an author. Their design team and experts in the industry will contribute to you to create the book that you've always dreamed of. Isn't it time to go big? Contact them today at www.bigcountrypublishing.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Garnet Schulhauser. If you want more information on his book, Dancing on a Stamp, go to his website, dancingonastamp.com. Garnet, we had a really wonderful talk in the first segment about how this all started. And so now you've brought us to that you were communicating on a regular basis with your spirit guide, and you had all of these questions, and you have some wonderful information in the book. I like how you wrote your book because it was definitely easy to follow with the questions you would ask and the answers. And you talked about all type of topics with your spirit guide, Albert. So can I ask you something? What was the one question that really stood out? I mean, you've asked many months of questions, right? But is there one that just blows your mind to this day?
Yeah, the biggest surprise for me was when Albert we were just talking about people dying and what happens after our death, and all that sort of disclosure made a lot of sense to me. But then Albert really startled me when he said that no one on earth dies by accident. And he said, it may seem like accidental things are happening all the time. People die in car accidents, or a plane full of 300 people crashes and everyone dies, or all the things that seem to be pure happenstance. He says that your soul has the ultimate decision as to when you make your exit from this incarnation, so your soul makes this decision, and oftentimes your soul will build in, or in fact frequently, your soul will build in exit points when you do your life plan before you're born. And these exit points, they could be an accident, or they could be terminal cancer, they could be whatever. And as you live your life, your soul can choose which one of these exit points it wants to take. And it depends on sort of how the life is going, and is it tolerable, and are you learning all your lessons? And these exit points actually can be changed. So the amazing thing is that when you read about a 6-year-old child being run over in the crosswalk and killed, and it seems like an awful tragedy, and the child's parents will say, gee God, why did you do this? And the short answer is, well, because the soul of that child decided it was time to go, and they left. So it's not accidental. It's not some random act of the universe that causes us to die. Our soul chooses it, and of course our human minds aren't aware of our soul's decision, but nonetheless our soul decides when to go. So whether it's somebody dying in a car accident or by terminal cancer, that is the decision of that person's soul, which sort of surprised me, because when you read about and listen on the news about accidental deaths all the time, and it was just sort of quite surprising to know that our souls choose, when we exit, when they want to go back home to the spirit side. And so one of the things I said to him then, I said, well, Albert, we're here having a human journey, and he had said that we had planned a lot of the things in our life beforehand, in our life plans, but when we're here, we have free will to take actions and decisions, and we're not allowed to remember what's in our life plan. So I said, Albert, here I am. I'm doing lots of things with my free will, and there's a bunch of other people out there on the street, on the freeway, on the street, in the office building, in the store, wherever you may happen to be. We're all acting out their own free will decisions. And I said, how is it that some of these events can't end up in causing my premature death when my soul is not ready to go? And he said, oh, yeah, well, there's a good answer for that. He said, because we all have guardian angels, and their role is to make sure that nothing happens to us that's not planned for by our soul in terms of an exit point. So if you're in a situation where somebody is going to drive their vehicle through a red light at an intersection, our guardian angels will be there to intervene physically if necessary to make sure that doesn't result in a death, and they may actually physically change the timing of the lights, or physically alter the trajectory of the vehicle, so that instead of being killed, you might end up with a broken leg. And so that's how your soul gets the ultimate decision as to when to leave.
That's really interesting. So I have a question for you from the information you received from Albert. If you have the exit points, let's say one of your exit points is age 52, and you really are having a good time now. Maybe you've gotten through a lot of the problems in your earlier years, and you're just really enjoying life, and you don't want to exit it at that age, but you're not aware that that's an exit point. Does your mind have any say in what the soul decides, or do you make a request to your guardian angel? I would like to live a long life this lifetime. Like, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, your mind doesn't have any sort of direct say with your soul, but they sort of, your mind can influence what your soul is deciding. So that if you're in a very happy state and you're enjoying life and you're enjoying your experiences and you're learning lots of things, lots of lessons, as you go through your life, your soul will know that, and so if your mind is in that sort of happy state and wants to continue going, your soul will be influenced by that. And so your soul still has the ultimate decision, but it will pay heed to what your human mind wants. And conversely, if you're in a really bad state and everything's just going wrong, and your human mind, you say, I can't stand this anymore. I need to get out of it. That will also influence your soul, because that may make your soul choose an earlier exit point so that you can get out of that, go back to the spirit side, regroup, and then figure out where you're going next. So your soul is influenced by your mind, but your mind doesn't have a veto or any sort of direct input. And your mind can certainly make pleas to your guardian angels, which obviously your soul is listening to. So all that is factored in. But that doesn't mean that because you're having a bad time that your mind can talk your soul to exiting, because the bad time you're going through may well be learning lessons that your soul wants to learn. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen. And conversely, if you're having a great time, your soul may say, well, we've hit all the points we wanted to in our life plan. We've learned all of our lessons, and now it's time to go back and we can, plan our next life and learn some more lessons. So it's not determinative, but certainly your soul would be influenced by what your mind would like to see happen.
That's interesting. So, did you talk to Albert about the law of attraction at all?
Yeah, I did. And I had started off the conversation on that part by saying, there's lots of books, hundreds of books about law of attraction, and all you have to do is positively visualize, things that you want, and the law of attraction will bring them to you. And Albert said, well, yeah, I mean, thought is very, very strong. On Earth, it's not nearly as strong as on the spirit side, where he says you have what's called, or he called, thought creation, where on the spirit side you can have anything you want instantly. If you want an apple in your hand, there it is. If you want to drive a red Ferrari, it will appear because you think that you want it, and you can go ahead and drive it. But on Earth, our thoughts are very less powerful, and that's by design, because that's just part of the school that the Earth is that we have to struggle more for the things that we want. So thoughts are very positive, and positive thoughts, positive visualizations can get us the things that we want, but it doesn't always work every time. And one of the reasons it doesn't is because if what your human mind wants is contrary to what your soul wants to do or thinks you should have, then you end up having conflicting thoughts, and you're not aware of what your soul is wanting. But if your soul is against what your human mind is desiring, then it's a lot harder to fulfill your desires. And the other thing about the Earth plane is that material things. If you're desiring material things of one kind or another, there's a shortage of a lot of material things on our planet, again by design. And so if there's several people all wanting the same material thing, obviously, and there's only one of them, not everyone's going to get their desire. So those are the two things that sort of pull back on the law of attraction and result many times in people not getting what they want. And so he just sort of cautioned me to say, look, it's not like the spirit side doesn't happen automatically. There are some obstacles, but he said thinking positively is very important, and oftentimes your thoughts will manifest themselves, but you just have to keep in mind that don't get frustrated if all your thoughts aren't manifested, because that's just the way it is on our planet, and that's just part of the school that we're in right now.
Well, that's really interesting about the positive thoughts, because there is a section in the book where you talk about evil and ask questions about hell and some really interesting feedback. And a question I really wanted to ask you, your insight, Garnet. So, according to Albert, there's he's a little bit controversial, going against the grain of standard religion, which a lot of us are questioning anyway. But when he brings up that there is no hell, the question I have for you, and you can expand on this in more detail. So, it is harder on the earth plane to take the path of integrity. Look in business. It's really easy to lie, cheat, and steal in business and become very successful monetarily, right? It's harder to walk that path of integrity and still make it in the business world. And so that was a little hard for me to read, saying, wow, I'm working so hard to lead this life in integrity, and it doesn't appear that it matters on the other side, or am I missing something? Can you explain this to us?
Yeah, walking a path of integrity does matter. It matters a lot for your soul. It may not get you the material success that your mind wants, but that's not necessarily why you came to this planet for this incarnation. And it may be that by walking that path, you're learning a lot of lessons that you wanted to learn, that your soul planned before you were born. So you may be just doing wonderfully, even though in your mind you might think, well, I'm not getting the promotions, or I'm not getting the wealth that I would otherwise desire. But that's maybe not the end game for you. So it's very difficult to tell, or you certainly can't assume that because you don't have material wealth that it's not, your life isn't rewarding, because it might be very, very rewarding, and you might be hitting all the points that you wanted to. The fact that there is no hell, that was that was a bit of a surprise, but not horribly, because I was raised as a Roman Catholic, and of course, very much part of what they preach, or at least they used to when I was a kid, was God may put you here, made rules for you to follow. If you don't follow those rules, when you die, God will judge you, and if you've been really bad, He'll send you to an awful place called hell, which was very fearful for me when I was a kid. As I got older, I sort of wondered about that, because it didn't seem to make a lot of sense. And so Albert just confirmed my doubts, my suspicions about hell. He just said, no, it's an invention of religious holy people, a way to help them control their members through fear. He said hell doesn't exist. In fact, everyone, when they die, goes back to the spirit side where we came from. And that's regardless of what you did. So if you're an axe murderer, you go back to the spirit side, the same as Mother Teresa, which seems unfair and unjust to some people, but he said that's just because you're thinking of it from a human perspective. And once you get back to the spirit side, you'll understand the cycle of life and the incarnations on Earth, and you'll understand fully why everyone goes back to the spirit side. It's the life here is sort of like a large play where we're all, running our own scripts, and some of us have bad roles and some of us have good roles. But at the end of the play, when the curtain goes down, we all go back into the street and realize that was just a play. It wasn't real life. And so when you get back to the spirit side, your life on Earth will seem very much like that. So it's still hard for a lot of people to take, but I know in my heart that when we get back to the spirit side, we will fully understand that.
Yeah, I always question the concept of hell, but I wondered if it was different levels of vibration, maybe after we passed over, depending on your soul ascension and your lessons you've learned, where you would go on the other side, if there was, any more information on that. So karma is another topic that you discuss with Albert. So here's the question for you. Did you come to understand that karma, is that something that you're fulfilling within that lifetime? Or is that something that spans over many lifetimes? Like, would I be paying for something in this lifetime that I did 20 lifetimes ago? What was your understanding from what Albert gave you?
Well, karma is a system for measuring sort of the good and the bad things you do during your incarnations, and they do carry over. And so, if you have a karmic debt after the end of one life, you can try to rebalance that in future lives, and it may take you a long time, depending on what you've done in your early lives, to sort of balance that out. But the interesting thing about karma was that I said to him, a lot of people believe it's like a immutable law of the universe, like the law of gravity, which means that, and they believe that if you've got bad karma, after you die, then you must go back to sort of into another life until you can, repay that debt. And you're sort of stuck on sort of some people refer to the wheel of karma on Earth until you've sort of cleaned off all your bad debt. He said it's really not a law, like the source or God or the universe does not dictate that you have to keep on going back into the earth plane until all your negative karma has been balanced out. He said that's really a choice that each soul makes, because souls have the ultimate freedom after the end of each life to decide, do I want to go back into another life on Earth, or do I want to stay in the spirit side, or do I want to go to another planet and incarnate into another life form? So it's always that soul's choice. But he said that souls have a strong moral imperative to further their evolution and to advance their soul's growth. And to do that, you can't, or you don't really want to leave a planet like Earth where you have a bunch of negative karma that has accumulated. So you feel strongly as a soul that I really need to go back and do some really good deeds in some life so I can get rid of that debt. And so it's a moral imperative for each soul to go back and try to get rid of the karma. But if you are absolutely, for whatever reason, as a soul, dead against going back to Earth, even if you have a negative karmic debt, you can not go back to Earth. It's ultimately your choice, but that's very rare because you really want to continue with your soul's evolution, and getting rid of your negative karma is one of the ways of doing that, so that you can then look back on all your lives and say, well, okay, I've graduated from the earth plane and I'm ready to move on to something else.
Well, Garnet, this is really an interesting conversation. I'm so glad you're on our show. We have a quick break. When we come back, we'll be speaking more about Garnet's interaction with his spirit guide, Albert, and more spiritual insights that he was given. We'll be right back.
Would you like to speak with a medical professional who integrates alternative health with traditional medicine, all from the comfort of your own home? It is easier and more affordable than you may think. Mary Ann Simpson is a nurse practitioner with 20 years experience specializing in women's health, hormone balancing, weight loss, and anti-aging. Contact her today to take the first step to feeling better at www.maryansimpsonnp.com. Would you like a tool to clear your energy field and raise your vibration instantly? Solfeggio Sound Healing from Earthly Frequencies is a new CD created to bring you earthly healing vibrations combined with higher dimensional galactic energy. Use this sound healing for meditation, massage therapy, releasing negativity, and astral travel. Solfeggio Sound Healing by Ted Winslow, now available on iTunes and Amazon.com.
Hello, I'm Lauren Skye, and I've been teaching people how to live a better life through meditation. I've developed a 7-lesson audio course called Meditation for Living. These energy skills will teach you to find peace within, to release stress and pain, and to create your life according to your true path. Isn't it time you start living the life you've always dreamed of? Visit laurensky.com. That's LAURENSKYE.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. We're having a fascinating conversation with Garnet Schulhauser. He's talking about the questions he had asked his spirit guide, Albert, and he wrote these questions and the answers in his new book, Dancing on a Stamp. Garnet, the big question. So you have information on when you talk to Albert, your spirit guide, about God's role. Could you share that with us?
Yes, and let me just give you the brief background. I was raised as a Roman Catholic, as I said before, and I was taught that, as a child, that God was the supreme being who put us all on earth for some reason known only to Him, and He gave us free will to act, and He made a bunch of rules for us to follow, and He controlled and manipulated the events in our lives, so that if somebody was in an accident, it was because God caused that. If somebody died tragically, well, God caused that. If you were bestowed good fortune from somewhere, well, that was because God decided to do that. So Albert sort of really changed that whole picture. I mean, he said that, God, he refers to God as the creator or the source. Doesn't matter what name you call God. He said, first of all, God did not put you in this life. You chose to come here on your own. It was a free choice that you made as a soul on the spirit side. So you made the choice to come here, and you also picked out the major aspects of your life beforehand when you developed your life plan. So it wasn't God who sent you here. You came yourself because you wanted to experience things to help your evolution as a soul. And he said, furthermore, once you're here, God does not manipulate things in your life. Things happen, good things, bad things happen just because of the interaction of all the people on the planet exercising their free will. And sometimes bad things happen because of the physical conditions on Earth, like hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, that kind of thing. He said, but it's not God up there pulling the strings. These things happen because that is the way the planet Earth is. And you knew that before you got here. So you can't, something tragic happens to you. There's no point in raising your fist to the sky and saying, God, why did you do this to me? Because God didn't do it. So you can never sort of feel like you're the victim of God or of the universe, because the things that happen to you are created. Your reality is created by yourself, by having devised your life plan beforehand, and then by your free will actions and how you react to things that happen on Earth. And furthermore, he said that God doesn't make rules. I mean, most religions say, well, you have to worship in this fashion, and you have to do this and not do that, and they have a whole list of rules and beliefs, and they say that these came from God. Well, Albert said that's just totally not true. They were invented by religious holy people, and God does not make rules for us when we're living here. And ultimately, when we die, we don't go before God and receive His judgment in terms of what we did when we're during our lives on Earth. There's no judgment by God or by the universe or anyone else, and there's no place for punishment. There's no hell or purgatory, and we all end up back in the spirit side. And the only person who will judge you for what you did in your last life will be you, because when you get back to the spirit side after your physical body dies, you will undergo a life review where you will look back on all the aspects of the life you just finished in a sort of very objective way, trying to figure out, why you made the mistakes you made or why you went off course, and then you will just sort of assess your own life and then decide from there, do I want to go back, and if so, what lesson did I miss that I want to relearn? So there's no judgment, there's no punishment, and we all put ourselves here. So that's really sort of like 180 degrees from what a lot of religions teach, and I found that very comforting, actually, because to me it rang true in my heart, and I knew that made more sense than what a lot of the things I was taught as a child.
That does ring true, I think, in a lot of people's hearts, because a lot of what we were taught when we were young, and if you really dissect any type of religion, you'll see all the flaws of the man-made rules and structures. But so what happened? Did you raise your boys Catholic before this happened with Albert? Or like how did your family react when, you're raised, and I was raised Catholic too, and so I understand the structure, especially Roman Catholic. That's what I was raised as well. So did you tell your wife, and you said you had sons, is that correct?
Yeah, I have two sons. Well, initially, before I met Albert, even though I had a lot of questions about my religion, just as a matter of force of habit, and also because my parents were very religious, and while they were still around, I didn't want them to think that I had discarded the religion. And so, we had our boys baptized as Catholics, just sort of out of inertia, I guess. And then gradually over time, we just sort of stopped going to church. But I would still, when I go back to visit my mom and dad, I would still go to church on Sunday because they would have been horribly upset if I hadn't. So I just sort of went through the motions. But then they passed on, and then we just sort of drifted away just because I couldn't. Even before I sort of met Albert, I just had a lot of problems with the rules and beliefs of the church, and so we just sort of gradually drifted away. And my wife was sort of she was actually raised as a Protestant and converted to a Catholic when we got married, we just all sort of, without really talking much about it, we all sort of just drifted away. And my sons don't go to church, and we don't go anymore either. And certainly, I wouldn't even think of it after having had my discussions with Albert, because he just sort of confirmed all my concerns and doubts about what the Catholic Church had taught. So it was a bit of a transition for sure. But now I feel very comfortable about it, and I have three sisters who still go to church, and they've read my book, and they've I'm not sure that they really like what I said, but they haven't really picked a fight with me about it, but so obviously we're still talking. But they still go to church, so they have their own journey, and I have mine, and that's fine. I mean, I don't knock people for going to church. I mean, you should do whatever you feel is right in your heart, and if you feel spiritually enlightened and uplifted by going to church, whether it be a Catholic church or whatever it is, then by all means go ahead and do that. It's just that that's not where I am, and I don't feel a need to go to church anymore, and I like to have my spiritual contact with within myself when I meditate, and that's sort of my outlet for my spiritual enrichment, I guess, if you would.
Well, and I've talked to a lot of people who are just like you and just like myself, that when you really connect with the source, with God, through meditation, that is so different than what we were maybe taught as children is God. And you become so fulfilled with that unconditional love that's all you need. And so I'm glad that you addressed this topic. It's really can help other people who might feel that way but be afraid to stand up and do something about it. So that's wonderful, Garnet. Before we end the show, I wanted to ask you something. You talk a little bit about the future with your spirit guide. Can you just briefly go over some of that insight with our audience?
Well, yeah. In terms of, first of all, it was in the context of time, and what Albert said was, on Earth you have we live with linear time. We have a past, we have a present, and we have a future. He says that linear time doesn't exist on the spirit side, and so everything that has happened in the past or will happen in the future is happening in sort of one big now. Now that's a really hard concept to grasp for humans, and I had a lot of trouble wrapping my mind around that one because we're so conditioned to linear time here on Earth, and part of our problem is that instead of living in the present, we all too often spend too much time thinking about what happened last week or last year, or what may happen tomorrow or may happen next month, and so our mind gets cluttered with these things about past and future. When we really should just be focusing on the now, which is sort of the goal for meditation, was just to get your mind to to stay in the now and not think about past or future. So he said, when you get to the spirit side, you understand that the concept of everything is happening right now. But, as a human, it's really a tough concept to wrap your mind around. So, he said, don't worry about it if you don't sort of fully understand it. You'll get it all when you get back to the spirit side. But in the meantime, when you're on Earth, you have to try your best to stay in the now and forget about the past and the future.
And what I got from your book was really to enjoy your life and not worry so much about all these things that, we were taught to worry about. And so as a final thought for what you've experienced and what you wrote about for this book, would you like to address anything else before we go ahead and close the show?
Yeah, I just want to sort of take up on what you just mentioned, Christina, is that, one of the things that Albert said was, don't take things so seriously. He said, you're here on a journey, you're here to experience things, but no matter what you do, you can't go wrong or become lost. You're always going to end up back in the spirit side. And so look at it in that light and look at life as an adventure. And if you have a positive attitude and think of life as an adventure, then no matter what happens to you, if you run into bad things, you're journeying down a bad road, if you have the right attitude and react in the right way, you'll still have an enjoyable life. And every experience you have, whether good or bad, is a lesson worth learning, and it adds to your evolution as a soul. So you can't really screw up. So with that in mind, he said, lighten up and just try to enjoy life more, because you're going to end up back at the spirit side when you die, no matter what you do.
Well, that's a great way to end this show, Garnet. And you certainly are an enjoyable guest, and this has been a wonderful conversation. If you would like more information about Garnet Schulhauser and his book, Dancing on a Stamp, go to his website, dancingonastamp.com. Garnet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for inviting me, Christina.
Oh, my pleasure. So to all of you out there listening, we thank you for your time and spending this hour with us, hoping that you will have a blessed and happy week. So until next time, God bless, and talk to you soon.
You've been listening to Big Country Publishing Radio, entertaining conversations to empower and inspire you. For more information, tune in every Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, or visit www.bigcountrypublishing.com.